No one wants to be a streaky athlete. That's why it's so important for you to learn how to be a consistent performer, which is exactly what we're going to be discussing in today's video. Before we get started with the video, I just want to remind you to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. We put out a new video each week on sports psychology and mental training to help you master the mental game and take your skills to the next level. Streaky. That's a word that a lot of athletes want to stay away from, because streaky means that 1 week you're on, the next week you're off. 1 week you're on, the next week you're off. This is not only tiring for you, and it leaves you second guessing yourself going into every performance, but it's also tough on your teammates, on your coaches, because a coach wants a consistent player. That's who they're going to put out there, and that's who they can trust is going to perform well. But the truth is, there are two different forms of consistency, or really two different ways to look at consistency. There's going to be the consistency viewed by a coach, and then there is consistency that is viewed by you, the player. Now, a coach's view of consistency is going to rely heavily on statistics and outcomes. A coach's job is to look at the statistics and see, okay, who on my team, if I put out there, is going to consistently perform for the job that I want them to do. So that's why coaches have to look at outcomes, because they're an observer. They're the ones observing this consistency, and then they're making decisions for the team based on that consistency and based on the outcomes of your past performances. However, the athlete's view of consistency is completely different. And it is important for you to understand the difference, because if you're caught up in the coach's view of consistency, where you're focusing so much on the outcome, if that's where your mind is, then it is honestly going to be very difficult for you to actually reach that level of consistency. The reason being is outcome-oriented thinking. Now, outcome-oriented thinking is going to be one of the main reasons why you aren't a consistent performer. The outcome means your stats. The outcome is whether you win or lose. The outcome is whether you make that shot, whether you get on bases at that, whether you throw that touchdown. The outcome is results. The outcome is result-oriented. That's why it's called outcome-oriented. Now, outcome-oriented thinking, this isn't really a form of thought that any athlete needs to develop. And this may seem a little confusing because you think that you need to be focused on the outcomes because that's the outcome that you want to have happen. However, the result is made up of many actions taking place. That's what gives you that outcome. It's not actually you focusing on that outcome. When you focus on that outcome, this can lead to performance anxiety, the fear of failure, perfectionism, and many other distracting types of thinking that are ultimately going to lower your levels of performance, which then means it's going to be more difficult for you to be consistent. Now, another reason that you may be struggling with consistency is a lack of belief, a lack of trust in your skills. Every athlete knows that you need to have confidence, but simply understanding the need for confidence does not make it any easier to feel confident. But when you are struggling with this trust in your skills, each day you're kind of showing up to the field or showing up to the court hoping and wondering if today is going to be the day that you feel confident, because you understand that in the past, when I felt confident, I perform well. But when I don't feel confident, I don't perform as well. I felt this a lot in college. If I would show up to the field one day really feeling confident, I really had no idea why I was feeling confident, but I was, it would be one of my best days. But then maybe the following weekend, I would show up to the field and I was feeling more anxious and less confident. And then very similarly to having a good day, that would be one of my worst days. And this is not going to be a very good recipe for consistency. So when you lack trust in yourself and you lack trust and belief in your skills, it's very difficult to then be consistent. The third reason that you may be lacking consistency is you have no set routine. Routines in training, routines in how you approach the game, such as a pregame routine. But when you have no set routine, this means you're not really giving yourself the best opportunity to then be consistent, because as you're going to learn in the 2 steps or the 2 ways that you can be consistent, developing routines are really important. So let's say you take a look at your daily training right now. And on Monday and Tuesday of last week, you decided that you were going to put in some extra work. But then you stopped for a week, and then the following week you kind of gave one day to some weaknesses that you found in the last game, but then it fell off because you had other things to do, and then the next weekend you performed okay, so then you didn't worry about it. But then the next week you didn't perform as well, so you decide, all right, this week I'm going to give 3 days to training that weakness. That's not very routine, and what you're doing is you're not giving yourself the opportunity to allow these improvements to build upon one another. Another way that routines can keep you from being consistent, or a lack of routines can keep you from being consistent, is when you don't have a pregame routine. I said that if you show up one day and you're feeling a lot of confidence, it's very likely you're going to perform well that day. But if you show up the next day and you are lacking confidence, it is very likely that you're going to perform poorly, or at least not as well as you did the day you were feeling a lot of confidence. Why is this? This is because you are having a very volatile mindset going into each game. The reason is you don't have a set pregame routine that you do that gets you into the optimal mindset to perform. It's honestly better to have an even kill confidence day in and day out than it is to have super high confidence one day and really low confidence the next, because those performances are going to even out because you're going into each game or each performance with a steady state of confidence. The same goes for your level of motivation, how calm you feel, whether or not you feel overly anxious. And all of this can be really attacked and solved by developing your own pregame routine. Those are the reasons why you may be struggling with consistency. Now let's take a look at the ways that you can actually build this consistency. And it's all going to start with understanding an athlete's view of consistency. For you as an athlete, in order to be consistent, you need to remove this outcome-oriented thinking, because we said that outcome-oriented thinking is one of the main reasons why you may be struggling with consistency. What you need to do instead is shift what it means for you to be consistent in your mind. Instead of seeing consistency as a byproduct of a good performance, view consistency based on whether you trained every single day, how much you said you wanted to train, whether you've been putting in mental training every single day, whether you develop a pregame routine and you focus on that, whether you focus on your goals every single day. It is shifting it from an outcome-oriented focus to a process focus. You are going to be judging consistency for yourself based on what you do each day leading up to a performance. That outcome is going to take care of itself, but that outcome is really for a coach to look at. This is where you need to let go of that outcome, let go of the result, and turn your attention to the process. And you say, I'm a consistent performer, or I'm a consistent player because I put in consistent work every single day. I'm consistently building upon my strengths and weaknesses. I am consistently making sure that I have the right mindset going into each performance. I've made sure that I'm approaching each game the same way. And when you approach each game the same way, it's very likely that over time, your performances are going to become consistent. So for you, it's not really worrying about the outcome of your performances and whether they're consistent, but approaching the game in a consistent way. And when you approach the game in a consistent way, that then results in a consistent outcome. Now, there are two ways that you can really focus on being more consistent. Number one is going to be developing good habits. Habits are when you take a routine, which we already said was really important, and you turn this routine into something that you just naturally do every single day. One example could be if you know that you struggle with anxiety, and that's keeping you from being consistent because you're overly worried and anxious going into a game about what may or may not happen. So you decide that every single day you want to develop the habit of performing maybe a mindfulness meditation and a visualization practice. So you develop that and turn that into a habit. So each day you devote 10-15 minutes to this practice, and you do that every single day. That's going to lead to you being more consistent because you're going to approach the game consistently in a more calm and focused mindset. Another example could be more on the physical side. So let's say that you identify that this point of your game is a weakness. Maybe you're a basketball player and you've decided that your free throws are a weakness. You're not very consistent at the free throw line. So you say, okay, every single day I want to develop the habit of putting up 50 free throw shots. Outside of practice or during practice if you have time, you decide I'm going to be sure that every single day I'm going to put these 50 shots up. If you do that every single day, Number one, that's going to turn into a habit, and then that habit is going to turn into you gaining higher proficiency in the skill of shooting free throws, which then is going to translate to more confidence and better results in the game. So no matter what your skills are, what your performance or your sport is, you can take this concept of developing good habits and apply it to yourself. Focus on developing good habits mentally and developing good habits physically, and when you do, habits are consistency. In order for you to have a habit, you have to be performing that act consistency. So that then equals the athlete's view of consistency that we just talked about. Now, of course, when you develop habits, things are going to come up and you're not able to do something for one day. The thing I always tell people, and when I'm working with athletes, I always encourage is try not to miss twice. If you can and you can help it, try your hardest not to miss 2 times in a row. Because as soon as you start to miss 2, 3, 4 times, it's really, really easy to allow that habit to just fade away. So when you're forming your habit, make it daily and really try to be sure that if you miss one day, you're going to pick it up the next day. Now, the second way that you can work on being more consistent is using process goals when you go into games. One of the main ways that you're going to be more consistent is if you approach the game consistently in the same way, from a mental standpoint. Now, for you to have the same mindset going into each game, you need to give yourself something to focus on, something that is not this outcome that we're so trying to get you to not focus on. The best way to do this is with process goals. Now, process goals are, very simply put, the aspects of your game or yourself that are 100% within your control. On the mental side, this is going to be your focus, your attitude, what you're thinking about. On the physical side, this is going to be your responsibilities during the game and your skills and your body and the way that you hold your body and the way that you go about performing your mechanics and remembering to do things. That is within your control. Process goals are not, I want to score 20 points. I want to get 5 catches. I want to get 2 hits this game. I want to strike out 3 batters. Those are not process goals. Those are outcome-oriented goals. Process goals would be, I want to follow through on every shot. I want to run my routes with precision. I want to make sure that I'm picking up the catcher's mitt before every single pitch and I'm focusing on that mitt. Those are all process goals. Do you see the difference? One is focused on the outcome and one is focused on the process. For yourself, going into every game, try to set 1 or 2 process goals on the mental side and 1 or 2 on the physical side. This is going to give you something to focus on during the game, and it is also going to keep you focused on the process. And when you're focused more on the process, you're going to be giving more effort to the process, not going to be focused on the outcome, and that is going to lead to you being more consistent over time. So put these 2 tools into practice, develop good habits, and be sure that you're utilizing process goals going into every game. And over time, this is going to lead to you being a more consistent player. If you're interested in more ways to be more consistent or a more direct approach to mastering the mental game, one-on-one mental game coaching can really help you. There's a link in the description below, so go check that out if you're interested and learn how you can get started with one-on-one mental game coaching. If there's any sports psychology topic that you want me to cover, just put it in the comments below and I'll be sure to cover it in the future. Thank you for watching, and I wish you the best of success in all that you do.